Hey, my name's Sean Jackson, and I work at Competition Distributing. I run an antique motorcycle company out of my shop back home in Pennsylvania. We sell 1910 and 1936 Harley-Davidson, Indian, and Panamerica motorcycle parts. We're real big into the bike world, obviously. We build bikes, we ride bikes, we participate in a lot of events, Sons of Speed, Cannonball, Chase, all that good stuff. Yeah, I've been working on bikes ever since I was a young guy. Big into FXRs, obviously. We got an FXR here. Have a few other FXRs back home. And yeah, just been plugging away at all that stuff ever since. Okay, so this bike here is kind of, I guess, cyborg, if you want to call it that. It's a 1986 Fxr chassis. That's about all its FXR on it, other than the tank, the seat, the rear fender. We took a 1986 chassis and we adapted a 2021 Panamerica drivetrain into it. We planned on building the bike after Sturgis last year. We were all on the way home. We just completed the Triple Crown with the FXRs, where that exists. You go to the East Coast Jam, West Coast Jam, and Sturgis all in the same year on your FXR, and you have to ride every mile. You can't trailer your bike or anything. So we were on the way home from that, from Sturgis. We're kind of all wrapping up. We're saying, hey, you know, like, what are we gonna do next year? It's been one heck of a year. And I started kicking around the ideas, well, you know, why don't we try doing something real crazy and building the Panamerica FXR, because it was a new drivetrain, brand new motor come out. It was really hyped up from the motor company, just a really good handling bike and had a lot of capabilities. And we thought it'd be really cool to take that new technology and incorporate it into this old technology that a lot of people regard as, you know, one of the best handling bikes that Harley-Davidson ever made. I mean, if you know FXRs, it has a very, very thick cult following. So yeah, we were kicking it around, and it kind of stalled a little bit, because obviously you can say you want to build a lot of stuff, but actually building it's another thing. But then our buddy Nick from FXR Bazaar reached out, asked us to be part of the Virginia City Roundup as an invited builder for the FXR class. And, you know, of course, it was a great opportunity, so we jumped on it. So we set out on a long road. It was, first it was, we need a motor kind of deal, because we didn't want to have to buy a bunch of stuff. And the motors you can't buy. It's too new. You have to have a VIN number to buy it from the factory. So we ended up having to buy a whole bike. God bless my wife. She puts up with all my stuff. I loaded up, called my buddy Chandler out in Utah, had him find the last Panamerica on our side of the country. It was the last base model. We wanted a base model so we didn't have to deal with all the extra electronics we already had a lot to do with anyway. So we got in a van, my buddy Kevin and I, and his son Liam, and we rode over to New York City. It was the last one in the country. We picked it up for the 2021 year and brought it back home, and we kind of announced to the world on Instagram that, you know, what we're doing. All right, here it is. 2021 Panamerica, last base model in the country. We don't need that adaptive ride height. Next step, full teardown. And it was, you know, kind of blew up after that. Once you say you're doing something like that, you know, a lot of people are like, holy cow. I think most people thought we were, you know, kind of joking around, like we weren't gonna be able to pull it off. But, you know, I built this entire bike with my buddy Kevin, and without him, it wouldn't have been possible. He's, you know, I'm the guy that comes up with some of the ideas, and I start drawing on paper and I give it to him, and he helps design and, you know, make it a possibility. And then, you know, then I do all the fab work. So we, you know, set out on a trek trying to build this bike, and you know, as it went on, the look changed. You know, you can always see a bike when you start it, but you know, as you go through the build, something in your head that you thought was going to look good just doesn't maybe fit or something. So we kind of made some design changes along the way. We ended up using the entire Panamerica drivetrain along with some other Panamerica components, and we wanted to make the bike look as factory as possible. And I think we really accomplished that, because we unveiled the bike at Sturgis this year, and I had a lot of people coming up to me asking me how I like the Pan Am. You know, so they didn't even really, you know it wasn't actually a Pan Am, it was the drivetrain, but they didn't notice the FXR frame around it, which was really cool. Kind of complimented us on our ability to make it look factory, so I was happy with that. But yeah, so it's a Panamerica front end, Panamerica front valence here, and then custom steel lowers that we fabbed and built. The swing arm on the back is completely fabbed, we built that. The chassis had to be modified heavily. We had to make removable keys for the bottom of the frame so that we could get the motor in and out. The biggest thing was making this bike serviceable in case you have any issues, which I'm really glad we did, because we had some issues. Yeah, so everything on this bike was fabbed or built in some shape or form. The stock Panamerica foot controls, nothing would work, so we had to take those, machine them, adapt them, make them work with our new footing position, you know. But we really wanted to have that cockpit like of an FXR, because if anybody has ridden an FXR, the way you sit in it, the way the bike fits you, there's just nothing really like it. It's a really light touring bike, you know. So we wanted that feel, but we wanted the horsepower and the specs for the Panamerica, which I really think we achieved, because when you ride this bike, it is just absolutely insane. And I'm not just saying that because it's my bike, but it's going to really be hard to build another bike that handles and has the power that this thing does, because with 150 horsepower and sitting in it like an FXR, it's just, yeah, it's awesome. It's a lot of fun, it handles really well, and it's a good time. I would say like the hardest part of building, it was kind of like a thing like we were going, oh, this is going to be the hardest part, oh, this is going to be the hardest part every time we got to it. But I would say the first thing was the swing arm, because, you know, looking at the bike and obviously not building the bike, you wouldn't really know, but there was a ton of work that had to go into that to make it fit in the Fxr chassis, because we wanted to use a complete monoshock in the suspension system out of the Panamerica because it handled so well. We'd be absolutely nuts to take that technology that Harley obviously put together with a team of engineers and throw it out the window. Getting that to fit in there and work properly and also aesthetically look correct, that was a tough one. The other real bad problem we had, which we kicked around and it was kind of getting down to last minute, was the air box. Because the stock Panamerica air box, it comes up, the throttle bodies are in the center of the top of the motor, and it comes up through and it goes underneath the fuel tank of the Pan Am. And putting it in a normal full style frame, there's a giant frame rail right there, so we had no option. So we actually, you can see it right here, it's a dual throttle intake right there, the front and rear pod filters, but that's 3D printed box. So we took a ton of dimensions and Kevin started modeling it, and we actually 3D printed our own air intake. And then we wanted to keep this thing as factory as possible, as far as we didn't change any sensors, we didn't change any electronics. This thing is completely the way it was from Harley-Davidson. And every sensor, everything on the bike that came with Harley, we used. So that air box has all the sensors and breathers that the stock Panamerica had, and we got all that designed in there. So that was another big challenge. And then I think the other thing was just like wiring and hiding everything, you know, because the Panamerica harness, the wiring harness, I mean, this engine literally has probably 25 to 30 sensors on it. Hiding all that and making it look right and getting it in the frame and making it maintenanceable, or at least the best you can, that was a tough challenge. And that was kind of like the very last thing of the bike. And yeah, so that was really tough, and getting all the computers and everything hidden away so it looked good, you know. But I would say those are definitely the hardest things we came across. So this entire bike, I have every option that the Panamerica has in this bike. So as of right now, unless there's somebody else out there that I don't know about, this is probably the most modernized FXR in the planet. It has, you know, rain riding mode, sport mode, you know, off-road mode, all that stuff is still on this bike. I use the full interface from the Panamerica, it's still on there. All the features are there. It's got cruise control. You can Bluetooth connect to your headset on your helmet, volume up and down, take phone calls, all that good stuff. So
dope, that's rad.
When we first set out on this, we always try to give ourselves deadlines, right? Because if you're ever get into a project where you're building something and you're taking something on, especially of this magnitude, it's really easy to kind of get distracted or get sideswayed by something else, especially in the world of motorcycles. Like we live in, that's all we do is eat, sleep, and breathe motorcycles. So with my other business, Competition Distributing, we have to build bikes, work on bikes, and we're always doing our thing. So we decided to set a deadline on this, and it was kind of crazy, I know it sounds, but we actually were originally intending to have this done in the early beginning of this year in 2022. We're going to try to have it at Daytona, because the way I look at it, for us in the motorcycle industry, Daytona is the first big rally of every season. It kind of kicks off all the shows, you know, the who's who in the industry, you know, who's got the next best bike out there, who showed up, who did this, you know. So we always try to kick off and build something for Daytona. With the amount of work this bike took, it just wasn't possible. So we kept kicking it out. But in all reality, we ended up finishing the bike. It was about 7 months on the dot, and it came really close down to getting it to Sturgis on time. And that was an absolute must. I wasn't going to accept anything less. We had to have it in Sturgis, because, you know, with the Virginia City Roundup being the date it is today, you know, August 26th, 27th, there was no chance that we were going to not have that done for Sturgis and, you know, not be at Sturgis, which we had to be anyway for the other bikes. And then have to drive home, finish the bike, and then bring it all the way back out here. It's just not feasible for us. We're 30 hours from home, you know. So Sturgis was our deadline, and we worked right up to the very last minute on it, as per usual on bike builds. But you know, wiring the whole bike at the very end, that was very monotonous, getting it to work correctly. But surprisingly, when we first turned that key and hearing that thing fire up for the first time and everything worked, it was huge for us, obviously. Especially for me, since I, you know, spent all this money on a brand new bike and tore it apart, and everybody thought I was absolutely nuts. So yeah, that was a real big thing for us, is getting it done for Sturgis. Sturgis was the kickoff for the bike. So I had only ridden it probably, I don't know, I think it was about 50-60 miles before we took it out there. I was trying to get like 500 on it, but just not possible. We only finished it 3 days before we left. So we did a video release of the bike, kind of announced it to everybody. And then I rode a little bit more, and then was loading it up with our other bikes and coming out to Sturgis. So we got it out here, unloaded it, and started riding it around. You know, we stayed in Deadwood, we were riding around Glencoe and everything. And testing a bike out there is absolutely awesome, because you got beautiful roads, really good bendies all the way through, really nice tight turn highways and stuff. So it was awesome, and I really got to see what the bike was gonna do. And the break-in on a Panamerica is 500 miles, and I only had 300 on it before I tore it apart from the factory. So I finally got over that 500 mile mark, and I was starting to roll into it a little bit, you know, and kind of feeling what it actually could do, get up on the power band. And I was just like, holy cow, you know, this thing's gonna be a lot of fun, because it was smooth, I had no wobbling at all. And, you know, all those nights of long labor and figuring out, you know, am I crazy, what am I doing kind of thing, it all like washes away when you're going down the road and going, you know, 70, 80 miles an hour into a turn and feeling like you go even harder, you know. So that was awesome. Had a really great time there. And then it kind of all went crashing down on us. So the last day I rode it, it was Wednesday of Sturgis, and we went into the Perowitz Paint Show. We're good friends with Dave and Jody Perowitz. You know, we want to have the bike at their show and kind of show that whole crowd the stuff, you know, the hamsters and everything. And we go into the show, rode it in the show, is running beautiful, no problems. Park it there all day. And we're getting ready to leave, and I'm talking to DP. And you know, we're talking about the drag races at the Baker Drivetrain, and they were sponsoring it, and we were going to go down there and have a good time at the drag races, watch guys run their bikes. And I went to go start the bike, and every motorcycle versus any motorhead's worst nightmare came true. It made a catastrophic sound, and by catastrophic I mean you just know in the bottom of your stomach that it is not good. And it did that to me. I turned the key, I went to go fire the bike, and it sounded like the rod was gonna pop through the side of the case, you know. And you know, my heart just sank right there, because I knew, you know, it's like I've been building and working on motors and bikes for a long time. And so I walked away, I pushed the bike out into the parking lot. We tried a couple little things, resetting the computers and stuff, hoping that it was just something crazy glitched out, but it wasn't. You know, we go to crank the bike, and never actually fired, but when it was cranking over, it was knocking really bad. So I actually reached out to my good buddy Danger Dan. I had helped him in the past with some things on his Panamerica, so I figured if anybody was going to be able to help me, it would have been him. And I knew he had called some crazy dudes up in Idaho to help him out when he was stuck down south. So he gave me the number of John from Grand Teton, and he told me to call these guys and they would be able to help me out. So with a desperate move, I called John. This is like 6:30 at night on a Thursday, you know, during Sturgis. So and John answers his phone right away. He goes, yeah, man, get it out here to us as quick as you can. And he knew the situation, you know. It's like most dealerships wouldn't even talk to a guy that takes a brand new bike and pulls the motor out of the stock frame and puts it in a whole nother chassis, you know. So the fact that they were even willing to talk to me, let alone tell me to bring this thing out here, it was another 10 hours in the other direction for us. You know, that was huge. So we loaded the bike up, brought it out to Grand Teton. And you know, the guys there instantly, you know, they had a crazy work schedule. I mean, they have bikes stacked as far as you can see in their parking lot. You know, obviously very busy. I think I overheard one guy come in for service, and I'm pretty sure I heard one of the dudes tell him, you know, it's gonna be 3 weeks for service. That's how busy these guys are. And they not only dropped everything, they took the bike and they took it right into the shop. And you know, within, I think it was like a day, maybe 2 days tops, they had, you know, a full diagnosis on what was wrong with the bike. When I got that call, it was kind of another big letdown, because I had been informed that, you know, the bike had been missing some hardware from the factory. And obviously, knowing what I did to the bike, you know, chances of having a warranty on that thing is pretty much shot at that point. There were still some little hopes there, you know, just because of the lack of us really changing anything. I mean, it's completely stock, you know. When I say stock, it's literally, you know, the entire Panamerica everything, as far as the harness and everything that would affect any kind of ability to run that motor or any damage to that motor. The guys at Grand Teton, they found it, and they told us what was going on. You know, obviously it was a little bit worse than what I was hoping. The motor was bad. It was not, you know, to the point where they could put a Band-Aid on it and get me back on the road. So we were there for you know, a few days, actually almost a couple weeks, because we were kind of waiting on Harley to hear what they were going to do on their end, and it ultimately came down to crunch time. I had been building this bike for, you know, as I said, 7 months, and not only that, my best friend Kevin was with me with his bike that was also an invited builder to the Virginia City show. And you know, not making this show is almost not an option. Obviously, if it was out of my hands, I would have done everything I could. But if it was out of my hands, it's out of my hands. But you know, my other really good friend Tom Banks, he always tells me, you know, do not give up until every last, you know, situation you come across is just not fixable. You know, so we did everything we could. Harley, obviously, they were like, yeah, just, you know, they didn't want to mess with it because we had touched the frame, which is, like I said, I understand. That I took that risk when I did this. So the guys at Grand Teton, they could have turned us away, and they didn't, you know. Jim, he had, the general manager there, he reached out and he's like, you know what, you know, we have a brand new Panamerica motor sitting here. So he offered us that brand new Panamerica motor that the owner of Grand Teton, it was his personal motor for his bike, to give it to us to get this bike on the road to make the show. And I was just, you know, it took me a minute to really comprehend that, you know, because I'm not dealing with a friend here. I'm dealing with a group of guys I've never met in my entire life. They don't know me from anybody off the street. And they could have told me to pound salt from day one. You know, they took their techs off their busy schedule and were helping me from the get-go. Now they just found out that all this work they've been doing, you know, needs to be paid for somewhere else, and besides the motor company. So not only that, they went above and beyond that. They offered me that motor, and now we have, I think, 2 days to have it done and get it to the show, because we just wasted all that time waiting on, you know, warranty results. So they started working on this thing. Kyle was the head tech on it. He's a great dude. They ended up letting us, Kevin and I, come in and work with them and help them get this motor and this frame, because obviously we knew the bike really well. We just finished building it. So Kyle and I and Kevin all kind of just, you know, got working together. And I will say this too, working with somebody you've never met before, that's another challenge in itself, because you just don't really know what somebody's going to do. And I've never experienced this in my life. It was like, I've been working with that dude for, you know, my entire life. Kevin and I worked together for 12 years. We know each other, you know, each other's movements, what we're doing. None of us talked to each other. We all just had a task we knew we had to do. We got the bike together in a crazy amount of time, actually. You know, that morning I think we had it started at 2:30 in the afternoon. And hearing that thing fire was, you know, a great sound again, you know, because last time I heard it run, it wasn't very good. So, you know, the hopes of making the show were back on. And that was huge for me, because, you know, pushing the bike in here with a blown motor just wasn't an option, obviously, if I didn't have to. And Grand Teton, I'll never be able to explain what those guys did. You know, I mean, I just did, but like, to actually have that kind of customer service and the care about a customer that you know, I didn't even buy the bike from them. You know, it's like I said, they didn't know me from Adam, and they took me in off the street and did all that for me, and, you know, gave me a motor to boot. You know, so it was just above and beyond. I will never ever buy a Harley-Davidson product from anybody else in this country again. Yeah, you know, they're 30 hours from my house. If I need anything, I'll be giving those guys a call. Customer service like that just doesn't exist nowadays. And to have somebody that cares that much about, you know, just the industry and the people in the industry, really shows that there's still good stuff out there in a time where, you know, motor companies don't stand behind their stuff and, you know, just try to get the money out of you and nothing else. So I will forever be in debt to those guys. And not only did we come out here, but we actually got to take home some hardware, so it makes it all worth it in the end. We got 3rd place in the Fxr division, which is huge for us because there was some crazy competition out here. You know, builders from handpicked from across the entire country. It's a huge honor to be on that list, and not only that on that list, but to, you know, bring home a win, you know, 3rd place win. It's huge, and I never would have been able to do it without those guys at Grand Teton. So, you know, all in all, it was a bummer for a while. It was highs, lows, but we came out at the end with a win, and I don't think I can ask for any more than that. So we're pretty excited about that.